Hello, welcome to Dungeons Podcast. We have another game review for you guys today. It's been a while. Today we're reviewing Xenogears, which came out in 1998, released by Square Enix or Squaresoft. I'm not exactly sure which came first. I mean, I know Squaresoft came first, but I'm not 100% sure if the game was released by Square back when Square was Squaresoft or when it was Square Enix. And it's developed by Monolithsoft. It's a 1998 turn-based JRPG with open-world 3D graphics, but the characters themselves look like sprites. But when you control the mechs, the gears, the main selling point of the game, they're CGI cinematics, right? So, if I sound like I'm rushing this review, I am, because it's my first take. I originally recorded this review this morning, but I hadn't beat the game. Right, which sounds like, why would you really release a review without beating the game? Because the final boss is BS, and the second disc is glitched because the developers ran out of money, and the director was like, I'm gonna, despite the fact my bosses at Square told me, release the game just release disc 1, okay? He had to make a second disc, right, where the game became basically a visual novel with occasional boss battles and dungeons, and that's it. And there were lots of glitches galore, especially during some of the hardest bosses in the game, or at least one, right, and the near the end, right. So I had, for 3 days, I was stuck in the maze-like dungeon, which has right before the final boss, which I thought was the final boss. Turns out it wasn't the final boss. You have a save room, and you can't go back to grind or whatever. You have no choice but either go forward or leave the dungeon, and you have to go through the maze all over again, which turns out if you press the select button, there's a map. I had no idea if that was there. So this morning I had finally beat Deus, who is the final boss, because for people who don't know, this game was inspired by Neon Genesis Evangelion, which the game story-wise and world is basically a combination of Gundam X and Neon Genesis Evangelion. And seeing how the whole selling point of this game is that are the mechs, don't be surprised when I reference mecha anime, because that was the main reason I played the game, because I'm a huge mecha anime fan, right? And lots of Gundam shit in this game. I almost said movie. Oh my god. So yeah, after I beat Deus, I thought, oh, thank God, I had finally beat the game. There was one more fight, and the game did not allow me to change my loadout, because I had my loadout specific for Deus, for my strategy to beat Deus, right? And so I got creamed. And seeing how the night before I couldn't beat Deus, and I had to go to bed, and I couldn't fucking sleep. I was like, fuck this game. This game's unfair, but you know what? Seeing some of the people talk about this boss online, saying how the final boss actually is super easy. I got pissed off, and I came up with a strategy to basically just blitz the fucking bitch. Okay? I boosted. Before I boosted, I strength up, which when you strength up, you sacrifice your defense, and I just boosted and I blitzed the chick before she can kill me. That's basically what I did. Oh my god. So yeah, so I did go back and beat the final boss. Okay, so Xenogears fans are still gonna hate this review because I have a lot to fucking say. The game is good, but it has problems, mostly with the disc too. So we're gonna go into what the story is about. The story is about which there's an anime cutscene that basically spoils it. So they probably shouldn't have had that anime cutscene, but basically, there's an anime cutscene where you see like a ship basically crash. Well, basically ejects its passengers onto a deserted planet, and the ship gets overrun by some kind of weapon. We're not exactly sure if it's like a AI thing or some kind of bio engineered monster, and it destroys the ship, right? Thousands and thousands of years later, right? Which I think it was like specifically 12,000 years or 11,000 years, I can't remember. We skip to our main character, Fei Thong Wong, who is a 17, I think he's 17 or 18, right? Who's an amnesiac who's been living in this village, this quiet village for 3 years. He's a painter, right? But he's also a martial artist, right? On the day of his best friend's wedding, who's getting married to the girl he likes, his village gets caught up in a battle between two squadrons of gears, which gears are what the giant robots are called in this, I almost said show, this game. Our main character climbs into the cockpit of a giant robot called Weitol, which, in my opinion, Weitol 1 looks probably the coolest. There's just like in Gundam, in the second half of the game, you get all your mechs get upgrades and you get new mechs, right? And you even get a third and final Weitol, right? But I think I liked Weitol 1 the best, right? And what happens? He's able, despite the fact that he has no conscious memory of ever piloting a gear, he's able to defeat the enemy combatants, but something goes wrong, and he ends up destroying his village, right? And with the help of Doc Uzuki, Seiten Uzuki, who's also a martial artist, but later on gets a sword, right? You go on a journey where you get caught up in a war between the surface dwellers, which are called lambs, and this high-tech civilization that lives in the sky, called Solaris, who for thousands of years has been controlling the lambs, right? And are up to shady shit, right? They even have their own version of the Nerve in this show, and the Council of Magi, the Council of Magi, where they're plotting and scheming some bullshit, right? And they have subordinates like Ramses, who is like the enemy general, right? And you have the super scientist, the mysterious super scientist Krellian, right? And his right hand woman, Miang, right? And there's also the Darth Vader of this game called Graf, who pilots a dark and red mech that's similar to our own mech called Weitol. I forget the name of his mech, right? So basically, your character goes on a journey with and making friends along the way, fighting in this war against the lambs, which are the surface dwellers, who are like basically living in Gundam mechs, where it's like post-apocalypse, but there's mechs against like basically, Star Trek. What's this called? Star Trek, who also have mechs, right? So I'm just going to go my likes and dislikes. I want to make this a short review, but I should also go into the different characters though. I will go through my favorite characters first. You have Bart, who uses whips, right? Who's like a desert pirate, exiled prince, who is a captain of the Yggdrasil, which is a sand cruiser submarine that later gets upgraded to become a flying ship, right? You have the Billy, who is the exorcist priest, who has 2 guns, right? You have Rico Banderas, who's a mutant who has wrestling skills, right? You have Choo Choo, which is basically a rabbit who doesn't pilot a gear but can turn into a giant rabbit. You have Ellie, who is an ex-Solaris officer who has a baton, right? Also pilots a mech, which, by the way, make sure not to equip her with your best items because she's going to disappear along with those items, right? But she's in most of the game. You also have Esmeralda, who is a nanomachine, but bioengineered human who can she fights by transforming her parts of her body into blades and stuff, just like the one character from Black Cat. Black Cat did not only rip off Cowboy Bebop and Hunter x Hunter, but they also ripped off this game. I couldn't believe that. And the final party member, if I didn't forget anybody, is Maria, who doesn't actually pilot a giant robot. Her giant robot has an AI, right? That was created by her father, right? And she's from the other technologically advanced country, Shevat, right? Which is very mysterious, right? Yeah. So now I'm going to go with my likes and dislikes. Characters designs are great by the same character designer as the Xenosaga games. The mechs are fantastic. Great mecha design. Even though I'm not a huge fan of the final Wadle, which is straight up called Xenogears. When you see it in anime cutscene, the final anime cutscene in the game, it does look cool. Next, great story, even though it does copy and paste a lot of shit, including Arthur C. Clarke and popular movies like Star Wars, Soylent Green, whatnot. I still liked it. It's still a great story. The anime cutscenes were fantastic, even though the art style was different. Which I forgot to mention, the anime cutscenes were done by Production IG. You also had cinematic cutscenes cinematic computer generated cutscenes that looked great. The music was good. The game actually ends with a song ending theme that has vocals in it, which I was surprised. There are mature themes that are super dark. There are sex scenes, but you don't see any nudity, obviously. There's developed villains. The villains actually go through some development, which a lot of games don't properly develop their villains. I'm looking at you, Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 15, right? Final Fantasy 14, I don't know. I've never played. I played the MMO, but I didn't get that far. Right, my computer can't really handle it. The gear matches, which were pretty good. There's a point in the game where you're in prison and you have to fight other gears in an arena, and they changed the combat from being turn-based to a 3D arena fighter, right, where you can shoot ether bullets, or you can go up close. You can go up close and beat the shit out of your opponent, right? Dislikes. This too is fucking terrible. The director ran out of money, and like I said, I don't know if I said it in this take, but he ran out of money, and despite the fact that Square told him just release this one, you probably would have gotten a sequel. The game probably would have sold well, but no, he had to continue the game, which this one is about 50 hours. This two, you can basically 20. I beat the game in like 70 hours, not including all the times I died and have to retry. But yeah, disc 2 is terrible, and there's lots of fucking glitches. Not a fan of the puzzles. You're going to have to look up a guide. Not enough save points, especially in the final dungeon. There's points, and even visual novels don't do this, where instead of you're going along, and there's anime cutscenes, or like, you know, people are talking, they decide to have, instead of showing, like, having our characters go through that shit, there's events in the game where it's Faye or Ellie sitting in a chair where there's screenshots of shit going on, where they recap events, right? Recap events that haven't happened yet, that are basically, instead of you going through a point of the story, they narrate you what happens, and then you fight a boss, which that was fucking dumb. There's too many party members. A bunch of the party members, I would say the last two, don't even get proper character development, especially Choo Choo, who's a joke character in my opinion. Cringe cliche movie references, anti-religion or / organized religion. I wasn't sure exactly, but yeah, the game was very controversial because the game has they criticize the Catholic Church. That's not up for the debate. The A-tone are basically the Catholic Church, right? Yeah, a lot of people straight up refuse to translate the game. That's why the dialogue, I think, is kind of shitty, because yeah, they had trouble finding people to translate the game because of the religious shit, which I wouldn't be surprised if. I mean, it's like, yeah, come on, these guys are Arthur C. Clarke fans. They're probably atheists, but who knows? The final boss is bullshit. And there's glitches. The final boss, by the way, is let's say the real final boss, which is Deus, right? Is basically an orb. There's an orb, and then there's four rotating orbs that are each a mini boss that gives Deus a special effect. And if you want to beat Deus and have a fighting chance, you need to beat at least 2 of them, which the game allows you to switch party members, right? But you can't refuel, so you have to switch your party members and try to save fuel and beat as many of the orbs as you can to defeat Deus. To have a fighting chance, you need to do 2, but if you want, you want to be at least 3, right? So you can change. So Deus will be super weak, and that way you can change your Faye's loadout so he has a fighting chance against Ouroboros, which is Miang in a monster form, right? So yeah. So now I'm gonna go with my final thoughts. So how my rating system work: for every like, it's +1, every dislike -1, and you start at a 5. So I had like literally 10 likes, 9 dislikes, and I even counted the shitty platforming in the game, right? Which there are shitty platforming, right? And you have to manually control the camera. You can't use. This was before you had the dual stick, so like you can't even use the analog sticks to play this game. You have to use the D-pad, and you have to use the L1 and the R1 to rotate the camera. So there's really bad platforming in this game. I didn't even count that. Which, by the way, you even have to platform with the mechs. Even though in the cutscenes, we know the fucking mechs can fly, but you still have to jump around during the platforming scenes. It's like, are you fucking shitting me? Oh my god. So yeah, basically, it's a 6 out of 10. Disc 1 is fucking great. Disc 1 is an 8 out of 10. But Disc fucking 2, holy fuck, is minus fucking 2, man. It's fucking terrible. Right. So yeah, overall the game's a 6 out of 1. Sorry, 6 out of 10. And I honestly don't recommend playing disc 2. Just fucking play disc 1 and then watch someone play it. Because disc 2 starts off super easy, as it should, because of how fucking terrible it is. But then it gets really fucking hard, right? Especially when they introduce the dungeons, right? And the game does go back to being open world at the end of the game, but you can't travel to a lot of the fucking places. So if you miss the rare fucking items, you're fucked, right? Yeah, and yeah, this is a game where if you use a guide and you get all the rare items and you use people's strategies, yeah, the game's probably super easy because you already know how to beat it. But if you're not glued to a guide, this game is very fucking hard, right? So yeah, just letting people know. But you know what? Sometimes sometimes games are only worth playing if they're hard. You know what I mean? Because if a game's too easy, it's not really that fun, right? But yeah, I like the game, but it has its problems. Xenogears fans, try not to spurk too much in the comments. Because YouTube's gonna shadow ban it anyway, so like, yeah, so it won't be me, it'll be YouTube. But yeah, it's a 6 out of 10. And for all the people say this game doesn't need a remake, I only agree to that because if they had made a remake, they would censor so much fucking shit. They would keep all the anti-religion shit, but they would censor the other shit, right? But yeah, if they remade this game, it would probably be worse. So, but I want at least a fucking anime. Oh my god, this game begs for an anime, right? It begs. So yeah, that's it for this review, guys. And also, I forgot to mention, there's like a masked mentor character in the game called Wiseman. It was very fucking obvious who he was the entire time, but whatever, right? Though I did like all this shit with the multiple personality shit. That shit was cool. So yeah, that's it for this review, guys. Our next game review is either going to be Kingdom Hearts 2 or King's Bounty 2, whichever I beat first. And I ran out of Trails games to play, so I'm going to be working through the Xeno games. Though I already beat the Xenosaga games, so maybe when I beat all the Xenoblade games, and if I'm still in the mood, I'll go back and replay the Xenosaga games. Because I really enjoyed watching that anime. And it did put me in the mood to replay the Xenosaga games. Also, I promised a top 10 Western RPG list. But you know what? I've only been like 30 or so Western RPGs. So I need a wider pool. So I'm going to be at least another 20 before I decide which, before I make my top 10. So every 3 games, I'm gonna be playing, a Western RPG. So just so you know, because I also like Western RPGs because I'm a fantasy book fan. Okay,